Welcome back for another deep dive. Looks like you've given us quite a stack of material on Terry Pratchett's The Last Hero. Seems we're about ready to head back to the Discworld.
A world delicately balanced, of course, on the backs of 4 elephants, which themselves stand upon a giant turtle. Always a good starting point.
Never a dull moment there. This time it looks like we're focusing on Cohen the Barbarian. Specifically, his quest to return fire to the gods.
And we can't forget about the Discworld's first foray into space travel, trying to stop him no less.
All with, of course, plenty of Pratchett's trademark philosophical questions about heroism sprinkled in. Never a straightforward journey with him.
Not at all. It's fascinating how The Last Hero plays with our expectations of classic fantasy tropes. I mean, here we have Cohen, this legendary barbarian, but instead of the usual treasure or glory, his quest might actually destroy everything.
Yeah, it's definitely not your typical hero's journey. Now, you sent over some notes on how fire represents a stolen gift in this context, something taken from the gods by the first hero, Mazda.
Right, and Cohen, feeling his age, believes he needs to set things right, return the fire, feels that urgency.
Makes sense. A bit of a cosmic oops moment, generations later. But it's the scrolls guiding Cohen on his quest that I find intriguing. They were found scattered all over the disk.
Oh, absolutely. Ancient tombs, a dusty inn storeroom. Really makes you wonder who created those scrolls and why.
Right. Are they actually divine instructions? Or is there someone more manipulative behind them all? Adds a whole other layer to Cohen's journey.
Definitely a good dose of mystery to go along with the potential world-ending fire. And then, of course, there's the Silver Horde, Cohen's companions, not your average fellowship.
That's putting it lightly. You have your notes about how Pratchett uses the Silver Horde for satire, takes classic heroic figures and gives them very human flaws.
Oh, it's brilliant. Like Boy Willie. Name might suggest youth, but he's definitely an aging warrior. Embodies that you're only as old as you feel saying.
And we can't forget Evil Harry Dread, so polite, all about proper villain etiquette. Clashes hilariously with the whole Dark Lord title.
Oh, for sure. And the Deaf Berserker. So much shouting, misinterpretations galore. Honestly, it makes you wonder how this group ever became legendary heroes in the first place.
That's like they represent the twilight of a certain kind of hero. The world's moved on, but they haven't. But speaking of change, on the other side of the disc, Ankh-Morpork is facing its first potential world-ending event.
Right, and they are not quite sure how to handle it. Lord Vetinari, of course, the ever-pragmatic patrician, gets the task of stopping Cohen.
Ah, but there's a problem. The usual solution, magic, doesn't quite work near Cori Celesti, the disc's magical axis, right?
Exactly. It forces them to think outside the box, or rather, outside the disc. Enter Leonard of Quirm, genius inventor.
You did mention he can be a bit distracted. In your notes, while trying to invent a spaceship, he creates a nonstick frying pan. Talk about misplaced priorities.
It's that clash between progress and practicality. Leonard's mind is brimming with groundbreaking ideas, but sometimes the urgent takes a back seat to the intriguing. But in a way, it's that whimsical nature that makes him so effective.
Makes sense. He needs that space to be creative, even if it leads to revolutionary frying pans while the world might be ending. But who ends up piloting this spaceship, this kite, as it's called?
The crew is a mix, to say the least. You have Captain Carrot embodying law and order, Rincewind, the inept but surprisingly lucky wizard, and, of course, the librarian.
Wait, the librarian, as in the orangutan. He's on a space mission.
His inclusion was more accidental than intentional. A stowaway who ends up having a surprisingly big impact, as it turns out.
That's Pratchett for you. Always the unexpected. So we have a makeshift spaceship, a crew with a tea-drinking orangutan, and they are trying to stop a barbarian from blowing up the magical center of their world. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, quite a bit, as it turns out. But before we delve into that journey and the inevitable confrontation, let's talk about the other major players in this story, the gods.
Yes, the god. Now, are they sitting on their celestial clouds watching this all unfold? Maybe getting ready to smite Cohen for his audacity.
Well, the gods in The Last Hero aren't exactly what you'd expect. More like casual. Self-absorbed, even. More concerned with their own little dramas than the potential destruction of the disc.
Really? So not your typical all-powerful, all-knowing deities?
Not quite. It's Cratchett satirizing blind faith, the often arbitrary nature of belief. They're powerful, sure, but just as susceptible to human flaws as anyone else.
So they're a cosmic representation of the powerful elite, more interested in their status and playing games with mortals than actually caring about them.
Exactly. And it's this realization that leads to one of the most pivotal moments in the book. Cohen reaches Dunmanifestin, the god's realm, and has a bit of an epiphany.
I'm on the edge of my seat here. What happens? Divine revelation? Backs down from his mission?
Neither, actually. He calls them out, realizes they're not benevolent beings but bullies, manipulating mortals through fear and promises.
Wow. Talk about challenging authority. How do they react to that?
Disbelief, mostly. And outrage. They're not used to being challenged, especially not by a mortal, even one as legendary as Cohen. But before that confrontation can really get going, something else happens. Captain Carrot and the Ankh-Morpork crew arrive.
They made it. So now we have Bargarians, God, and representatives from the Disc's most chaotic city, all on this magical mountain. Sounds like the setup for an epic showdown.
It certainly is. But before we jump into that, we need to unpack the other players and the rules of this very strange game. The fate of the world's at stake, after all. Welcome back. We left things off with quite the standoff. Cohen, the gods, and the Ankh-Morpork crew all gathered on Cori Celesti.
A recipe for chaos, for sure. Ancient heroes about to possibly destroy the Disc, a pantheon of, well, self-absorbed deities. And then Captain Carrot, Mr. Law and Order, strolls in. What happens next?
It's this amazing scene, highlights the tension between all these forces perfectly. You have the gods, used to calling all the shots. Now they're facing a challenge they didn't see coming.
And Cohen, he's got this mission. But seeing Carrot, this unwavering sense of duty, he has to reevaluate things.
And the Ankh-Morpork crew, well, they're just trying to keep the Disc from ending, survive the whole ordeal.
The ultimate clash of ideologies, really. Ancient traditions versus divine power, and then you throw in this very human concept of law and order. It's a lot.
It is, and the thing is, the Silver Horde, they're bound by their ancient code. But Carrot's stance, it resonates with them.
You keep mentioning the code. The source material you send over touches on it, but never really goes into detail. What is it exactly?
It's like an unwritten set of rules. Governs how heroes, like the Silver Horde, act. A mix of chivalry, honor, and a bit of self-preservation thrown in. It's what makes them heroes, defines them.
So even though Carrick's there to stop them, they see him as one of them, embodying the same ideals.
Yeah, and it throws the gods completely off guard. They're used to heroes playing by their rules, following the script. Carrot doesn't. He represents something different. Heroism grounded in justice and law, no matter what he's facing.
It's like Pratchett saying that true heroism isn't blind tradition or bowing to authority. It's about sticking to your principles, even when the odds are stacked against you.
Absolutely. Oh, and then you have the Valkyries arriving. Mythical figures collecting the souls of fallen heroes adds another layer to everything, the sense of predetermined fate.
Oh yeah, you sent the part with Vina the Raven-Haired, taking on the Valkyries.
That's such a crucial moment. Here she is, this older hero, past her prime, you might say, but she refuses to be defined by age or expectations. Taking on the Valkyries, it's a statement. Individuals have the power to choose their own path, even when facing death.
It's powerful, challenging the idea that our destinies are set in stone. So what about Cohen and his quest? Does he return the fire?
Things don't exactly go to plan. The gods, they're desperate to regain control, so they offer Cohen a deal, immortality, in exchange for giving up his mission.
I mean, who wouldn't want to live forever, right? Especially a hero facing their own mortality.
It's a classic dilemma, immortality versus accepting the end. But for Cohen, it's even deeper than that. He starts questioning the whole idea of heroism, the stories, the legacies.
What do you mean?
He realizes that immortality might trap him, turn him into this static figure in the stories, frozen, unable to change or grow.
Wow. It's like he's saying that maybe hero isn't about living forever. It's about making the most of the time you have, leaving a mark on the world.
Exactly. He realizes true heroism isn't personal gain or eternal life. It's challenging the status quo, even when facing impossible odds. And his decision, it impacts the Silver Horde.
So they don't blow up Cori Celesti.
They see Cohen's defiance, Carrot's unwavering commitment. They realize they've outgrown the old stories, the traditional hero roles. They choose a different path, one of self-determination.
What do?
They ride off into the stars, their faith deliberately left ambiguous, hopeful but melancholy. They reject the confines of their world, the roles assigned to them, embrace the unknown.
Quite the ending for these legendary heroes. What about the minstrel they took along? He was there the whole time, trying to make sense of it all. Did he get his epic song?
Faced with the chaos, their final act, the minstrel has this realization. The song matters more than the singers. It's the impact of their actions, their legacy that's important.
Even though their ending is uncertain, their story continues. Their defiance of the gods, their challenge to what it means to be a hero, it'll echo throughout the Discworld.
And that brings us to the resolution of the story, the aftermath. The Ankh-Morpork crew returning. But before we get into that, let's pause. Think about this act of defiance from Cohen and the Horde, what it says about heroism in a world that's always changing.
I'm still thinking about that ending. Cohen and the Silver Horde just riding off into the stars. It really makes you think, what happens to heroes after the story's over?
That's the beauty of it, really. It's open to interpretation. Did they find something beyond the disc? Did they just fade into legend? Pratchett lets you decide.
I like that. It's a reminder that not all stories have neat and tidy endings. But what about back on the disc? How does everything wrap up for the Ankh-Morpork crew?
Well, their return is a let's say, less dramatic. The kite gets taken apart almost immediately, but the citizens of Ankh-Morpork no less.
Resourceful bunch, aren't they? Almost like the world didn't end, so they missed the scale of what was prevented.
Exactly. It's classic Pratchett. And poor Leonard, as a sort of penance for building the kite, he gets tasked with designing these bird-shaped boats.
Quite the punishment. Though fitting, I suppose, for someone who sees the world a bit differently. But what about Carrot and Rincewind? Do they get a hero's welcome?
They return as unsung heroes, really. Most people don't even know their role in everything, overshadowed by the whole spectacle of Cohen's quest.
I guess, in a way, it fits. You were saying earlier that true heroism, for Pratchett, isn't about the recognition. It's doing the right thing, even if no one notices.
Right. Oh, and speaking of things not everyone might notice, you sent over some notes about Leonard's painting, the one he's working on throughout the book.
Yes, it gets unveiled at the end, right? It's described as so lifelike that the eyes seem to follow you. Didn't think much of it on the first read, honestly.
Ah, but those little details, they can be so significant in Pratchett. That painting, to me, it symbolizes creativity. Even with everything going on, the near destruction, art still endures, captures a moment, preserves it.
A testament to that human spirit, the drive to create, even when faced with the unknown.
Yes, and it ties back to what the Mistral realizes, that the song, the creation itself, matters more than who made it. Whether it's a song, a painting, or even a spaceship built from spare parts, it leaves a mark, a legacy, outlasts the individual.
So what does all this mean for us, the listeners? We're not exactly facing down gods or building spaceships.
It's a challenge, right? To think about our own roles as creators, storytellers, the people shaping the world around us. What songs will we sing? What art will we leave behind? What stories will we tell?
Those are some big questions. And what a journey this deep dive has been. Heroism, the divine, the power of stories.
Pratchett really makes you think, doesn't he? All while making you laugh. The Last Hero is one of those stories that sticks with you. Reminds you that even in a world as strange as the Discworld, there are truths about being human.
It's been great exploring all this with you, as always. Any final thoughts for our listener before they head back out into the wider Discworld?
Just remember to embrace the unexpected, question everything, and never underestimate the power of a good story. Until next time, may your paths be filled with laughter, wonder, and of course, a healthy dose of satire.